Hello, everyone. I am Chris Hyams, CEO of Indeed, and welcome to the next installment of Here to Help. This is our look at how Indeed has been navigating the global impact of COVID-19. Today is September 21st. We're on day 202 of global work from home. And as many of you know, at Indeed, our mission is to help people get jobs. This is what gets us out of bed in the morning and what keeps us up at night. And we also have 5 core values, and these are the things that help guide us on that mission. And last month on Here to Help, we wrapped up a series where we explored each of those core values. And one of the core values in particular, we've devoted a number of past episodes to, and that is inclusion and belonging. And in the US, here we are celebrating National Hispanic Heritage Month, which runs from September 15th to October 15th. And at Indeed, we're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month throughout the month in a number of different ways, led by our Latinx in Tech, or LIT, Inclusion Resource Group. And today I'm delighted to be talking to Thomas Gómez, Data Governance Analyst and Regional Co-Chair of LIT. Thomas, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Chris.
Well, let's start off where we always start off with a check-in. How are you doing right now today?
Well, appreciate that question. And before we get started, I do want to just say thank you again for inviting me on this series and allowing me to participate and sharing my story with you all. It is Monday, but we had a really great long weekend. I was able to celebrate my mother's birthday here in Austin with my family and my grandmother's birthday, my abuelita, virtually, her 90th birthday. So it was a lot of fun, and I'm really happy to be here. I will say, over the past few months, it's certainly been a challenge from the very onset of COVID and kind of panic shopping, figuring out what we were going to do, working from home with my 2 young boys, to the more recent events and feeling the weight of what's happening in the world. It has been tough, but I'd like to think myself as a glass half full kind of guy. So at the end of the day, I have my family, our health, our community, my friends. I have a great job, and I'm happy to be here today, starting the week off, helping people get jobs.
Great. Well, I'm happy to be here with you. We have a lot of ground to cover today, but let's start with a little bit of background. Can you tell us a little bit about your personal background and about your role at Indeed?
Sure thing. I would love to. Let me start off this question by just talking a little bit about my background, and then that'll explain how I made it here to Indeed. So to anyone I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Thomas Gómez, also Thomas Gómez. I do go by both, as I am half Mexican, half American. My mother and her side of the family are from the Midwest of the United States, Indiana, Minnesota. And my father and his side of the family are from a southern state called Oaxaca in Mexico. My parents met at the University of Michigan. They then moved down to Oaxaca, where my sister and I were born, and I grew up there, lived there for 12 years. At the age of 12, my parents did end up getting separated and went through a divorce, but we ended up having an opportunity to start a new life in the United States, and we could either go back to Indiana or Austin. Thankfully, we chose Austin, and we've been here ever since, and are having a lot of fun here. So after finishing up high school here in Austin, I was able to attend university down in San Marcos, eat 'em up, Bobcats. I managed to finished the university with a BBA in business management with a focus on Latin American studies, but I was still a little unsure of what I wanted to do later in life. I decided to take a short break from school and go back down to Oaxaca as a little sabbatical and really think about what I wanted to do in life. I ended up enrolling in a bunch of art classes, trying to reconnect with my roots. I took classes for sculpting, drawing, painting, acoustic guitar, even dance. These classes were a lot of fun and one of the best times of my life. I was able to rebuild my relationship with my father and really figure out what I really wanted to do. Now, 6 months later, I did realize, hey, I have some college loans that need to get paid off. So it's about time to get moving. I came back to Austin and took a job at my uncle's family business, selling Six Sigma trainings and certifications. Then back in 2015, I ended up meeting my lovely wife, Monica, at a friend's birthday party. And shortly after, we were married. Monica has a similar background as I, as she was born in León, Guanajuato, Mexico, and moved to Dallas at a young age. She was very proud of her Mexican heritage, and that was something that we connected on. We now have 2 young boys, Leonardo Valentino Gómez, or Leo, and we have a 2-year-old, soon to be 3-year-old, Pablo, little Pablo Gómez. And it's been a lot of fun. Parenting, though, is definitely a wild experience. It's been fun, challenging, rewarding, but it also can be frustrating at times, right? You'll know as a parent that you're going to learn a lot from your kids, and it's never going to be a dull moment. Now, after working for my uncle's family business for about 5 years, I was working from home, so it's a little strange to be back in this environment, but I wanted to try something new. I wanted to see what else was out there, and so I decided to start job seeking. Now, I have a couple of stories I'd like to share with you, Chris, about my job seeking experience before I landed the job at Indeed. So the first one was I had seen a friend, an acquaintance from college, post a page on Facebook for a new company that he was starting. I visited his website, and it looked very bare bones and needed some work. So I had some experience in building websites in the past, and I reached out to him and I said, hey, let me help you. Do you need some help? What's going on here? We ended up meeting at a coffee shop, and I met the rest of the team and learned about the idea. It was a lot of, super cool, innovative, and super exciting. He said, he brought me on board and was like, yeah, this is what you're going to get paid. This is what we're going to do. However, a couple of weeks into, working at this little startup, we started to realize something was a little strange, and we were actually not going to be getting what we were promised. Turns out that, we were kind of in a scam. And at that point, we all quit, and we're, feeling a little bit disappointed. It was definitely a very weird experience. And after that, though, I was getting a little desperate, feeling a little bit down, but thanks to my own personal Judy, aka Monica, my wife, she supported me and helped me continue the job search. I ended up applying to a lot of other jobs, but another story I'd like to share with you was when, at the time, I did have really long dreadlocks. I'm not sure if some of me might remember that. You can go on Workday, and I think my original picture is still up there. But yeah, when I went to this interview, and the first thing the hiring manager said to me was, well, you're going to need to cut your dreadlocks off. Are you okay with that? And I said no, and the interview was over. It was really weird for me to experience that, right? Like, just being judged based on what I look. And I was like contemplating, well, do I need to cut the dreads off? What's going on? I'm not going to be able to get a job. But then I had a spark of hope. I got a job alert from Indeed in my email, and it said, hey, we're looking for a country manager for Mexico. I ended up passing the initial screening, going to the interview. Unfortunately, did not get that position, but the recruiter did reach out to me and say, hey, we have this other position in the search quality team, moderating content for the Spanish-speaking markets. I ended up nailing that interview and got that job as my start at Indeed with the search quality operations team. I want to give a shout out to my original lunch buddies, Jorge, Jay Rios, and Melinda Nelson. It was an awesome experience. During my interview at Indeed, I was actually, celebrated for who I was, right? People wanted to get to know me, who I was as an individual. They were interested in my dreadlocks. They wanted to just, learn about me, and they didn't see that as a negative thing, right? So that was super awesome. And then, 5 years later, I'm now here on a new team, data governance team. We're about 10 analysts right now, 4 managers, and are also in the process of hiring a few more people. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm happy to be on the data governance team, and I'm glad to see that Indeed takes data very seriously, and it's something that we're working on very hard.
That's a great story. I hadn't heard the part. I thought it was interesting that you were on the receiving end of a sort of fraud and scam like situation. That's obviously when you started Indeed on the search quality team, that's one of the things that team is responsible for. So I think having a personal connection is always meaningful at work. So to move on to kind of the main topic here, you're the regional co-chair of our Latinx in Tech, or LIT, Inclusion Resource Group. Can you talk a little bit about just the mission of the inclusion resource groups here, and in particular, what is it that you are working to help accomplish with LIT?
Definitely, yeah. So I've been involved with LIT very back since its inception back in October of 2016. I have been co-chair for 2 years now, and I do want to take a moment and send my deepest gratitude to all the members on our leadership team. LIT would definitely not be possible without you. And muchísimas gracias. The purpose of LIT and our IRG can best be summed up by our mission, which is Unidos. We help the Latinx community and our allies develop and drive change. Now, we uphold this mission in a variety of ways, from hosting volunteer events in the community, partnering with various nonprofit organizations, hosting in-house panel discussions and brave spaces on the issues that our community faces, and working together to really help our members develop and grow their careers here at Indeed. We want to ensure that Latinos and Latinas come to work at Indeed and know that this company will do whatever it takes for them to succeed in their careers. A big thing that we try to do with LIT is just provide resources, right? My wife always mentions the importance of empowering our community with knowledge. A lot of time people just don't know that these resources exist and that they're here to help. So a big thing that we do are, job squad events. We help people learn how to use Indeed, how to search for jobs, how to create their resumes, and how to set up job alerts and everything that there is to know about Indeed. We do this both in English and in Spanish, and we try to help our community that way. We also partner with several nonprofits. We can mention, Latinitas, American Youth Works, Hispanic organizations such as UTHBSA, Todos Juntos, and many more. One of the most heartening events that was put on by our Scottsdale team was the reusable water bottle drive for the homeless community. LIT Scottsdale, came together. They were able to pass out 125 care bags filled with sandwiches and supplies, along with these water bottles. If you don't know, Scottsdale can get super, super hot, and so having these reusable water bottles was super awesome. Everyone was so grateful, and it was really just a true act of kindness and love. I wanted to also give a huge thanks to everyone who helped that event come true. What else? So I'm thankful to be a part of the LIT leadership team. Personally, it's given me a lot of opportunities to develop and grow my leadership skills. I'm here today talking with the CEO of a 10,000 plus employee company. I'm able to work and network with people from all over the world. I'm able to help other people grow and develop themselves as leaders. And I'm hoping that LIT can pave the way for future generations, and that what we do has an impact on people's lives.
That's great. Well, one thing that's interesting, and actually before I jump in, just wanted to reinforce your shout out to the Scottsdale Lit group. It's actually one of the more recent groups that got started up, and it's one of the fastest growing, and they've done really amazing stuff. I've had a chance to be out there with them. So thanks to that whole team. One thing that I think is really interesting. So we were talking last week when we were preparing for this, and I have one of the shirts from the original founding of Lit, and the original name for the group was Latinos in Tech, and it was officially renamed to Latinx in Tech. And I think one of the things that we try to really focus on within the inclusion resource groups at Indeed is helping broaden understanding about different topics, and that the recognition that words matter a lot and how we describe things and the words that we choose. So I'm imagining now in 2020 that a lot of people are familiar with the term Latinx. Maybe even a few years ago they weren't. But could you just talk a little bit about the history of why we chose Latinx as the term and what that means, and some of the complexity behind that?
Definitely, that's a great question, Chris. Yeah, it is difficult to describe such a vast, diverse group of people. Everyone in Latin America are Latin Americans with just one word. And I'm sure if you ask, anyone with Latin American roots, you are sure to receive like a variety of answers. Some people will say we're Latinos. Some will say we're Latinx. Some will say we're Hispanic. Even the official name of the month is Hispanic Heritage Month. Now, each of these different terms has, I'd like to start with kind of defining Hispanic, which refers to anyone from Spain or Spanish-speaking parts of Latin America. Now, this was a term that originated in the 1960s just because officially oftentimes, even Mexican Americans or Puerto Ricans were being categorized as white on the census. And by falling into this category, it really meant that they couldn't, distinguish themselves or show the government that they had separate needs. So in the 1960s, groups and activists such as the National Council of La Raza, they fought and lobbied the government for a new term that would unite these varied groups. And that's where the term Hispanic, came to be. Fast forward after, into 1980, after the census created its first, report of this group in the United States, people were able to see, just what that Hispanic buying power was, and it was used as a way to, promote and increase corporations' influence on this community. Now, the term Latino refers to people from the Spanish and Portuguese-speaking countries of Latin America, but it does not include those from Spain or Portugal. And across various age groups, people are going to say they don't really have a preference between Latino and Hispanic, but some other folks will say that Hispanic kind of promotes that Spanish ancestry and leaves out the indigenous people of Americas. So we're starting to see a little more focus on the term Latino. Fast forward now to the 2000s, we have the term Latinx, which has kind of existed online since 2004. And, it's a way to dispense with the problem of prioritizing male or female by negating that binary. And this is why we in Lit, we chose to change the name to Latinx. We want to ensure that everyone in our community knows that we're here to help and that they are included and belong in our group.
Great. Thank you for that foundation. I think it's really helpful moving forward. So now we'll just jump back into the Hispanic Heritage Month. As you mentioned, that's the name here. So we're just at the start of HHM here in the U.S. Can you talk a little bit about why this month is important and what it means to the Latinx community?
It's mainly a U.S. observed holiday, right? It started back when President Lyndon Johnson made it. It was a week-long Heritage Week back in 1968. It was later expanded in 1988 by President Reagan to cover that 30-day period. We start the 30-day period on September 15th, as that is the day that several Latin American nations declare their independence from Spain, with several others to come shortly after. Another important day is October 12th, which is also celebrated as the Dia de la Raza, or known as Columbus Day. This, marks the anniversary of when Christopher Columbus arrived in the Americas. Throughout this entire month, it's important to showcase our Latinx leaders and show just what the contributions that we have made in the United States and the world. We want to inspire future generations, and it's important that we also, learn from history and do our best to take steps forward and not repeat past mistakes.
So let's go back to something that you mentioned earlier. So you were born in Mexico, spent the first 12 years of your life there, and then you were raised in the U.S. And that's a really, I think, common story within the community or variations of that. Can you talk a little bit about how having a foot in both of those places kind of shaped your own experiences?
Growing up in Oaxaca, certainly shaped my worldview, and the experiences that I had while living there have offered me a very unique perspective to life. Many of you may not know, but Oaxaca is one of the poorest states in Mexico, with over 60% of the population living in poverty and over 1 million people living in extreme poverty. However, it is also recognized as one of the most culturally rich states in the world and best places to travel. We have super delicious food. We have arts and crafts from various different communities. We have Barro Negro, Alebrijes, Niños Santos. We have the widest tree in the world called the Árbol del Tule. We have one of the only 2 petrified waterfalls in the world, beautiful beaches, and many places to enjoy ecotourism. So Oaxaca, I like to brag about it, but you definitely need to go check it out whenever you get a chance. Now, and the main reason for all this diversity and richness in Oaxaca is probably stems because of the diverse cultures and groups of people that live there. In Oaxaca, they speak more than 11 different languages and various additional dialects. A few top ones to mention would be Zapoteco, Mixteco, Mije, Chatino, or Triqui. I did live in Oaxaca up to 7th grade, and I really enjoyed my childhood in the company of my primos, my primas, my tios, and all my family, right? When I moved to Austin in 8th grade, things were very different. School was different, the food was different, people were different, and I just kind of had a new world that I was living in. That being said, I still looked white. I look white, but because I was from Mexico, sometimes I was still bullied or harassed or even called, derogatory terms. It was such a weird experience for me. I never, heard these hateful words and really wondered, why is this happening? Aren't I also American? What's going on here? It's very strange. I kind of have had a place in both worlds, but never fully belonged in either, just because of the way I look, right? Like either being too white or not white enough. And now this is something that actually happens both in the US or in Mexico, right? I can be, if I go back to Oaxaca and say, hey, I'm from Oaxaca, people will say, well, that's weird. And they're still perplexed and they almost don't believe me, right? But if I come here in the US and then I say that I'm Mexican, people will say, well, you mean Spanish, right? And I'm like, no, I'm Mexican, right? And so it's just been a very strange, struggle that I've had to deal with my whole life.
One thing that this brings up that's really interesting. So you talked about, the 11 languages. I think I read somewhere that in Mexico alone, there's 68 different languages. And, even the first definition that you gave was looking at the Spanish speaking countries, but there's so much more than that. If you look at, the community that is represented by this label Latinx, that has so much diversity, in many ways is probably there's more actual genetic and cultural diversity than there is in all of Europe. How does a community that's so broad and with so much diversity come together under, a single identity?
Yeah, well, it's a very good question, and one that I don't really have the answer to. I personally view myself as more of like a humanist, right? And I try to promote just equality across all people. It's definitely important to be proud of your heritage, your nationality, but also, try to break away from these labels and these, tribalism that confine us to just one certain group of people, right? I like to start with a blank slate when meeting someone new and just really get to know them as individuals. Even between Mexican Americans, born in the U.S. or born in Mexico, there are, differences and oftentimes just animosity between us, right? So being able to speak Spanish like a Mexicano or speaking Spanish as a Mexican American can be a source of division, right? It's going to be difficult for all Latin Americans to come together under just one identity. But as we talked about earlier when discussing the terms, Hispanic, Latino, Latinx, there are benefits to being grouped together. We do share traditions, culture, language, and values, and we also do face some of the same challenges, right? So we can more easily relate to each other, look out for support, and help each other out. Now, ultimately, I will say that we all need to come together, for humanity in the world and just treat each other as equals.
To shift gears a little bit now into kind of the present, one of the things that was behind the sort of starting of this podcast series here was around navigating COVID-19 and the impact on particularly around employment. But one of the things very clearly in the U.S. that we've seen here is that the divides, the inequities that have existed for many, many years here have been really exposed and in many ways, laid bare and made worse by the COVID-19 crisis. Can you talk a little bit about how that crisis has affected the Latinx community here?
It's been tough. I think we can see the data and we can tell that, people of color are getting hit the hardest. In the U.S., Latinos, Latinas are being hospitalized at a rate of 4 times as much than white Americans, and that's just for the data that we do have, right? Besides the United States, 7 out of 20 countries with the highest case to mortality ratio are Latin American countries, right? So that is really affecting us as a whole. One huge factor contributing to the high number of hospitalizations in the United States is because of the large population of Latinos and Latinas who work as essential workers in the essential workforce, right? So that means that as Latinos, we are at a higher risk of being exposed to the virus. Another thing is that, we don't have all the data, right? This information is only available for those who do seek out treatment. And as we know, we also know that Latinos have a low percentage of health insurance, and we do have a high number of undocumented immigrants as well, right? So not being able to visit a hospital, not having health insurance, and seeking proper medical care, it does actually affect our communities even more than what the data is showing. At the same time, right, most of the work that is being done cannot be done remotely, right? We have to go out and actually be out and expose. Most of the Latinx community also, or the undocumented immigrants, will be living paycheck to paycheck, which means that they have to go out and work or they won't get paid and won't be able to provide for their families or pay their bills, right? They are not able to collect unemployment. So, all in all, I want to say that most of our issues that are facing the Latinx community have existed long before COVID-19 appeared. In the United States, we have more immigrants than any other country in the world. And as such, the immigration system is going to be a challenge, and to get one working is going to be also very difficult. But sadly to say, I think the system we have in place is not working and needs a fix. I'd like to quickly just talk about, the example about DACA, right? So prior to 2012, children brought to the U.S. illegally could be deported, right? This meant that these people were living under the threat of deportation, having to live in the shadows, and just not not being treated as equals. After the program was accepted and passed, 800,000 people applied and got it, and this generation of immigrants is known as the Dreamers, right? DACA has had a huge impact on young undocumented immigrants. When a recent survey showed that over 70% of them were able to get jobs with better pay, 60% of them were able to open their first bank account, 65% were able to buy a car and pursue higher education opportunities that they previously couldn't, right? So all in all, this is really important, and I'm glad to see that in June of this year, the Supreme Court ruled to preserve these protections and ensure that they are able to stay here and live with us. Now, a couple other topics that I won't get into today, but definitely affect the Latinx community are, the family separation, temporary protected status, and the detention centers that we hear about.
Most relevant to Indeed, employment and jobs. This is another area where we've seen big differences, and especially with everything that's gone on in the last 6 months, potential for even widening gaps. And so there was a recent set of surveys from the Bureau of Labor Statistics around remote work and sort of this vision of the future of work. And we spent a lot of time, I think in the tech world and certainly in the press talking about, well, there's going to be this bright, beautiful future where everyone's going to be able to sit on their laptops on a beach and work wherever they want. But the availability of remote work is not evenly distributed, and how that will work in the future right now looks like it will disproportionately affect Latinx and other communities of color. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen there and what your thoughts are?
Yeah. So just as you mentioned, 10% of the jobs for no college degree are only 10% are not remote, or only remote, right? So as we talked about earlier, a higher percentage of Latinx work is in the essential workforce, which means that they won't be able to work remotely. It's going to take a collective effort from all of us, citizens all over the world, and take care of each other, sometimes making sacrifices to ensure that we can, beat this virus and hopefully someday go back to normalcy, right? Another data point in that same report shows that having higher levels of education will be, allowing for remote work. So what we need to do is ensure and teach upcoming generations just how important education is, right? We need to also make changes to the immigration system, right? As I mentioned, we need to start allowing immigrants to pursue higher levels of education. We need them. We need to continue empowering organizations that offer, GEDs or other forms of certifications that allow people to give a second chance in life and continue to pursue these higher levels of education. So I think if we do all of that, we'll be, setting us up for success in the future.
So when we talk about the complexity of these issues, again, around inclusion and belonging, allyship is one important piece. But the other piece is that, when you just look at the groups that we have within Indeed, most people don't just neatly fit into one square. And so we talk about this concept of intersectionality. And while we can support individual groups, really, as you said, we're kind of all in this together. There's one sort of big fabric. So what have the IRGs done, and what are some of the things that you're working on to help create an inclusive environment that really recognizes this intersectionality and how deeply connected we all really are?
For sure. Yeah, I think we've done a really great job at Indeed, and we've really embraced the intersectionalities and allyship roles within the IRGs. I feel like this year, we're collaborating more than ever. We're really working together, supporting each other. Several examples as in America, as it's been plagued by the police brutality and wrongful deaths of Black Americans. We've stood by our brothers and sisters in protests, rallies, and calls to action. At the onset of COVID, when we started to see xenophobia spreading, against our Asian communities, we stood alongside them, offered support, encouragement, and really educated those who were, spewing this hate, right? When we learned about what's been happening in the military and the unnecessary deaths of, Vanessa Guillen or Elder Fernandez, we rallied together with our Vets and Allies IRG. We hosted Brave Space. We educated ourselves on the history of the military. How is law enforced from within, and understood the ways that we were able to change that. When we also hear stories about, lack of healthcare or abuse and horrific acts happening at the immigration detention centers, we speak out, we inform ourselves, and we stand together to make change. We recently also launched the regional ally leadership roles for each IRG, and we hope to learn from these new leaders on how we continue to gain allies and have them be part of our IRGs. I want to also, reiterate that everyone is welcome in all IRGs, and I want to encourage you to join one today and get involved.
Great. So to kind of try to tie this all together and to wrap up, and to look towards the future, one of the things that's been a common theme in all the discussions that we've had here and probably around discussions that people are having everywhere around the world is that the last 6+ months have been incredibly challenging for so many people, and at the same time we've seen amazing resilience and adaptability. And so when you look at the past 6 months and what you've experienced and what you've seen, is there anything in there that gives you some optimism for the future?
Oh, of course, Chris. Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm a glass half full kind of guy. So I'm always optimistic. I always try to send out, a good positive energy out in the world. But I have seen just, how our communities have come together in the joint fight against COVID, how there is still so much good in the world. That gives me hope. Seeing how Indeed, is supporting our employees, all the different benefits we're offering, right? How our IRGs are coming together through this adversity, seeing changes actually happening in the governmental systems, changing our society for the better, right? People standing up against hate, racism, and xenophobia, people standing up for what's right in the face of that adversity. I see new leaders, emerging, making the world a better place for the next generations. I know that love will defeat hate. I know this, and I'd like to also leave you with a wonderful message from a well-known Latinx astrologer who passed away just recently last year, the great Walter Mercado. He says, "Reciban de mí siempre paz, mucha paz, pero sobre todo mucho, mucho amor." Right? So we need to spread peace and love, and I really think that the world will be better, and we can make that so.
Well, Tomas, thank you so much for that, and thanks for joining us today. This was a wonderful conversation, and thanks for everything that you do for Indeed and helping people get jobs all over the world.
Thank you, Chris. It's been a pleasure to be here with you.